And this moment is a special moment, because at this moment there is the potential that exists within our students to spread this change and to bring about a happiness revolution. A peaceful revolution that will increase levels of well-being around the world. A revolution that will generate not just more well-being, not just more happiness, but also more health and more goodness, more generosity, more kindness. This is about making the world a better place. This is about making a meaningful difference. And when I think about it, I know that this is the moment. Right now, right here, together.
Hello, everybody. It is wonderful to be here and to see you. I'm so excited about today's conversation. I was really looking forward to it. Before I introduce Brian Johnson, just a few words. So these are conversations that we have with luminaries, with people who have done interesting things, who have looked at interesting phenomenon, who are making our world a better place. And we do it through the Happiness Studies Academy. And what we do at the Happiness Studies Academy, for those not familiar with our work, is we're about the happiness revolution. And specifically, we offer a certificate program in happiness studies, and we have an amazing community of fellow journeyers. And together, we are also striving to make the world a happier, better, healthier place. Well, Brian Johnson is a revolutionary. He's the founder and CEO of Heroic, and you'll hear more about Heroic momentarily. He spent half of the past 20 years as a founder and CEO, and the other half as philosopher. As the founder and the CEO, he's raised over $20 million and built and sold 2 market-leading social platforms. As a philosopher, he's created over 600 philosophers' notes and the optimized protocol, which has been scientifically proven to change lives. And I must add, it has changed my life. Brian was featured in the documentary Finding Joe on the modern hero's journey, the topic we'll talk about today. With Heroic, he's bringing all that together to create a world-changing platform that enables individuals to be the best, most heroic versions of themselves. And today, hopefully, we'll do some of that, help us get closer to the best, most heroic version of ourselves. So without further ado, Brian, hi.
Tal, it is so good to see you. Thank you for your kind welcome and invitation to be here today. You are one of my favorite people on the planet and have changed my life many times over. As you know, I talk a lot about ancient wisdom and modern science, and you are my #1 go-to on the modern science. So thank you, bless you, and excited to connect.
Great, thank you. And you know, Brian, in many ways today is payback time because in the past you got to ask most of the questions. Today I get to ask them. so here is my first question, and here's how it's going to work. We're going to chat for about 25 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for questions from our audience. So my first question: what is your vision? What do you want to achieve? With Heroic, you've done so many things. What's here, and what do you want to translate into reality?
That's great. Well, Tal, some people write down their goals because science says it increases the likelihood of you achieving them by X%, 40 whatever percent. I decided to write down my most important goal somewhere I'd never miss it. So literally, I meditate for an hour every morning, and I start my practice by saying to myself, hero, I see a world in which 51% of the world's population is flourishing by the year 2051. And as you know, that's, James Pawelski, when he was meeting with Marty back in the day, creating the positive psychology movement, asked them, hey, what's our moonshot goal? And my understanding is apparently Marty, poo-pooed it originally, then came back the next morning and said, I figured it out. And James said, figured what out? I figured out our moonshot goal. Let's help create, via the science of happiness and flourishing, a world in which 51% of the population is flourishing by 2051. The first time I heard that years ago, I thought it was crazy. I still think it's crazy, yet that's what I've dedicated my life to. And we're committed to playing our roles as humbly yet heroically well as we can to help create a world in which 51% of our population is flourishing by 2051. That's the high level vision and what I've dedicated my life to. The more practical side of it is we want to create an answer to the social dilemma. So we think that social technology can be used for good. We know it can be. And how can we do that? And how can we create a social training platform with guides that can literally fundamentally change the world, one person and one virtuous act at a time? And that's the kind of high level brief take on what I'm dedicating my life to, and feel blessed to have your support with, and thousands of investors and founding members and all that good stuff.
That's amazing. So I'm wondering, I'm putting on my research hat for a minute. So we have research showing that, around 40% increase in likelihood of achieving goals if you write them down. And we have, the research by Locke and Latham. I wonder if that percentage goes up if you tattoo it on your forearm.
I'm not sure, Tal, but I'll tell you what, it goes up even higher if someone else tattoos the mark. I just got a note from our team yesterday. I told my wife, Alexandra, this morning, this guy got the tattoo right here. And I often, when I'm raising money, I say, you want to know the number one part of the presentation? It's there. I'm not going anywhere. 30 years all in, as long as I'm alive, God willing, I'm all in. But one of our new members who's gone through our coach program tattooed it here. And I told Alexandra this morning, my tattoo drives me. That individual's tattoo takes it to the next level. So I hope so, Tal, for all of our sakes, but, working on the process, showing up, and doing our best, and let's see what we can do together.
Great. Let me share with you, a study that really impacted me when I think about the hero's journey. And this was done by one of my mentors. I know you certainly respect his work tremendously, and that's Warren Bennis. And, Warren Bennis looked at business heroes, at highly successful leaders, people who've really changed the world. And he looked at the young ones and the elderly, and he found one common element among them. All of them went through a crucible, a very difficult and hard experience that was life-changing as well. It was something personal, something professional, but it was a crucible. And again, not just a small little, struggle that you bounce back from immediately, but something very deep. Is that essential for the hero's journey? From your study?
I have goosebumps as you asked that. Absolutely. I mean, this is, even Richard Rohr, the great Catholic teacher, describes it as falling upward. It is literally a signal point in the hero's journey. We need to experience that pain of not quite fulfilling our highest potential, or however you want to frame that, which is a requisite part of the process of becoming that next best version of ourselves, and embracing that disillusionment, embracing that suffering, which is a big part of our work together. And I call that crucible the forge. You need to be willing to go into the forge. And yet all of the things we are most proud of, we can look back and see they came through that crucible. They came through those hard times. And if we can remember that in the midst of the current hard times, we can eat that, we call those hero bars in our work, knowing that that's the fuel for your current journey. But yeah, I've certainly experienced that. I know that in our conversations you have, and I think that's a really important thing to get, because then we can quit rejecting all of the past things that didn't quite go the way we want, and the current struggles we have, and we can embrace it and use it all as fuel. And as Paulo Coelho says, bear those scars that we all have like metals. It's a sign that we're striving to be our best, not a sign we're doing it wrong, but a sign that we're willing to go out of our comfort zone. And we need to get better and better at doing that more consistently, day in and day out.
Yeah. So, so we talk about the necessity of going through a crucible, and yet it's not a sufficient condition. So some other things have to happen along the crucible, because there are many people who go through the crucible and don't end up on fulfilling the hero's journey in terms of fulfilling their full potential. So what else? So what needs to happen? What are the other necessary conditions?
Yeah, this is great. And in basic training and the work we do with the coach certification program, we have 7 objectives. So I think what the crucible moment does when we suffer is wake us up to a new reality. So the first objective that I always start everything I do with is you got to wake up to the fact that society has seduced us to play the wrong game. And we got to know the ultimate game. And the way that I frame that, which is objective 1, is let's invite, the best of ancient wisdom and modern science to the party. I often use Aristotle and Martin Seligman as proxies for ancient wisdom and modern science and say, hey, gentlemen, as proxies for all the great faith traditions and modern science, what's the ultimate purpose of life? And they'll give us the exact same answer, of course. It's eudaimonia via arete, if you prefer Aristotle's old school, and by the way, that's my other tattoo, or flourish by putting your virtues in action. So I think that the pain we experience is what drives us to discover a deeper truth. And that deeper truth is unbelievably important. And the way that I frame it is a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a first step. Of course, that's true. But if your first step is in the wrong direction, you're going to wind up 2,000 miles further away from your desired location. And the faster you move toward the wrong destination, the further away you get. So I think those crucible moments wake us up to that reality, and they give us an opportunity to know the ultimate game. And then, even that's not sufficient, of course, then we need to forge what I call anti-fragile confidence, knowing it's supposed to be hard, getting stronger every step of the way. We optimize our big 3, energy, work, and love. We make today a masterpiece to move from theory to practice to mastery. Then we go deeper into our mastery of ourselves, knowing willpower outpredicts IQ by a factor of 2 for academic performance and everything else we want. Then we, in my philosophy, dominate our fundamentals, eating, moving, sleeping, knowing energy or zest is the virtue most highly correlated with our flourishing. And then finally, we do what I describe as activating our soul force. And when I look at all these heroes, the one thing they all have in common, and I've got, Churchill there next to Gandhi. One was frail and rare, would take days off of talking. The other was portly and rarely stopped talking, and they didn't even like each other, is my joke. But they had one thing in common, which is what I call soul force. It's that eudaimonia, that good soul coming through. And ultimately, how do we activate that idiosyncratic soul force within when that best, most eudaimonic version of ourselves can show up more consistently? Anyway, that's the quick tour of the 7 objectives that I think can give us a starting point to more consistently show up as that best version of ourselves.
So can we dig a little bit deeper? So you talk about the 3 elements: energy, work, and love. So under energy, I believe you had eating, moving, and sleeping. Is that what generates energy?
Yeah.
Or say more?
Well, yeah. So we have 7 fundamentals, 5 of which are physiological: eating, moving, sleeping, breathing. Somewhat surprisingly, most of us breathe wrong through our mouths, which will create more of a fight or flight, anxiety state, etc. And then focusing our attention, which of course is a hallmark of flourishing people. And if you can't focus your attention when you want, where you want, for how long you want, you're going to suffer and be enervated. So those are the 5 physiological practices and fundamentals that we encourage people to engage in. And I basically take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which of course makes sense in nuanced discussion of actualizing and then transcending. But I draw a circle around the base. And I say, look, if your physiology isn't right, good luck getting your psychology right. We've got to get those fundamentals dialed in. And then a lot of the challenges we face psychologically become a lot easier. But yeah, those are the 3 plus 2 more physiological: eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, focusing.
And then what does work and love relate to?
So the way that I frame that, I kind of have an origin story on the big 3, where I was into Stephen Covey was the very first author that I ever read in self-help. We got my daughter, Eleanor, back there. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, loved it. He talks about roles and goals. That you have different roles in your life and you have different goals for them. Then you have categories of improvement, which is Tony Robbins' take on it. I'm actually going to pause for a moment. Let's take one of those breaths. I'm going to let them know that I'm on an important call, which I had before, but this is an opportunity to practice our philosophy. I will be right back.
So in the meantime, I'm going to summarize. So it's about energy, work, and love. And when it comes to energy, we have eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, and attention. And it's interesting, Brian and I have, met numerous times and talked, but we started off our organizations separately. And the focus is very similar because, we focus a great deal on nutrition and of course on exercise, sleep, and so much research on that, on breathing and meditation that go very much hand in hand. So Brian, I just did a recap. All back to you.
Thank you, Tal. Energy, work, and love. We get an opportunity to practice the love in real time. So anyway, Stephen Covey has his take, others have their take. I found myself overwhelmed as a young man striving to optimize my life. There were too many things to think about. And I don't agree with Sigmund Freud on a lot of things. But when I heard him say that a good life comes down to two things, getting your work right and your love right, a choir of angels sang for me. And I said, that's exactly right, with one asterisk. If you don't have great energy because of poor lifestyle choices, you're going to have a very difficult time showing up powerfully in your work and your love. So we distill that into the big three: get your energy dialed in so you can show up powerfully in your work and in your love. You're at least 80, 90% there. And this is what I've architected our coaching protocol against and our entire Heroic platform. 3 minutes, big three, top three things you're going to do today to be in integrity with that best version of yourself in 3 minutes. Can we fundamentally, permanently change your life, help you flourish so we can change the world 1% at a time together, starting with you and us today.
What can you do in 3 minutes that will get you closer to that vision?
Yeah, so the way we architect it is the first most important thing is you've got to know the ultimate game. If you're chasing Instagram followers and all the fame and wealth and hotness and the hedonic extrinsic pursuit, as you know better than I do, even if you're successfully pursuing that stuff, you will be less psychologically stable than those who are focused on the intrinsic eudaimonic core drivers of becoming a better person while deepening relationships in service to something bigger than yourself. So the first most important thing is to make that shift. And the moment you make that shift and start walking up the right mountain, then the question becomes, okay, if the ultimate game is to flourish by putting your virtues in action, or as Aristotle said, the summum bonum is eudaimonia, to have a good soul, and you do that by living with arete, which I describe as closing the gap between who you're capable of being and who you're actually being, then the question becomes, how do you operationalize that? How do you operationalize showing up as the best version of yourself, energy, work, and love, by putting your virtues in action, not someday, but today? So the 3-minute process we created with MetaLab, the company that built Slack and Tinder and Uber Eats, we tried to make it as elegantly simple as possible. Where in the morning, you start your day, first time you pick up your phone, recommitting to being your best self. And I tell a story about Michelangelo and David, and I forget, you're back in New Jersey, right? Not in Israel? Yeah, so I imagine though, the iconic statue of David. And the question I pose our community is, okay, so David is the most iconic hero in history, arguably, right? So Michelangelo is sculpting this statue. What moment in David's heroic life did Michelangelo choose to capture? Very few people, one person has known the answer to that question. Now, it wasn't the moment of victory. It wasn't after he defeated Goliath. The moment he chose to capture was David's moment of decision, when the outcome was uncertain. And you can feel, and I get goosebumps every time I share this story, you can feel an incomparable intensity in David's presence. The moment he decided he was going to show up and strive to be the best version of himself in service to something bigger than himself, which is the definition of heroism. I offer that New Year's resolutions are interesting. New Day's resolutions are much more interesting. So we created a 1-minute protocol in the morning to recommit to being your best self, energy, work, and love-wise, to embody certain virtues. For me, I show up as an athlete in energy. I show up as a leader in work. I show up as a soulmate in love. And there are certain virtues I'm committed to embodying, not someday, but today. And there are 3 targets I'm going to hit in order to be in integrity with that best version of myself. In a minute, and I can literally show you, the app and what I do. It's a minute-long process where I recommit to these identities, and I actually changed them a little bit, in my energy, my work, and my love, and the virtues that I'm going to aspire to live with. In 1 minute, I can recommit to that. And then throughout the day, as I hit those targets, so I meditated for an hour this morning. When I hit that target, and I can actually maybe show you. So I meditated for an hour, and Slack invented or helped craft the Tinder swipe. So we have this target swipe, leaning on Aristotle's idea that we're teleological. So all day, every day, I'm hitting virtuous targets, 2, 5, 10 seconds at a time. 1 minute commitment in the morning, 2 minutes of hitting my virtuous targets, 3 minutes a day. We're not launching until April, but we're really excited to be able to scientifically say, if you hit 10 virtuous targets on Heroic, then you will be X% more energized, more productive, more connected, AKA you will be flourishing. And if enough of us do that, we can literally change the world one person and one virtuous act at a time. It's a long aside to it. That took me longer than 3 minutes to describe how we do it in 3 minutes, but that was the creative challenge. How do you operationalize the fact that all wisdom traditions across all cultures have said, and science has affirmed, it's all about putting your virtues in action in service to something bigger than yourself, not someday, but today.
Yeah. I love this idea of that moment that we make the decision, that moment that we make the commitment to be a hero, to be the best version of ourselves. And as you were talking about it, I had an aha moment about aha moments. So let me explain in less than 3 minutes. So so when we talk about aha moments, about the eureka experience, it's actually a process. And what does that process look like? So in order to come up with a great idea, usually, first of all, there is exploration, there is learning, there is study, there is exposure to a certain content, whether it's learning how to play music and studying music, whether it's learning certain literature, philosophy, history, or whatever, and you learn and you expose yourself and you immerse yourself in the material. The next step is of the creative process is incubation. No coincidence that we come up with our best ideas, in the shower. In the past, it was when you were in the car. Today we're busy in the car, but when we had time off, when we just roamed. And after these two steps, first of all the immersion and then the incubation, that's when you have the eureka experience, the aha moment, the lightning bulb. And then afterwards, of course, comes all right, now you need to do the work. If you had the aha moment, now you need to write it out. Now you need to spend the next 30 years doing what you thought of doing in a minute or a second. It reminds me of, Mozart, who said, I used to come up with my symphonies in 1 second. In 1 second, I heard it all. But this 1 second came after a lot of learning and studying. And it usually came when he was riding in his carriage in the streets of Salzburg or Vienna. And so it was, and then of course he went home and he wrote out the symphony and rewrote it until it became, what it became. So in many ways, we've been talking about those conditions, getting to that moment of decision, when David stood and said, I'm going to be the best version of myself. I'm going to change history. But before that came a lot of preparation, a lot of incubation. David was a shepherd, so he spent a lot of time roaming, physically as well as intellectually. And I think I think there is a parallel here between the creative process and the heroic process.
Yeah, and then again, just very tactically, David had practiced with his slingshot again and again and again and again and again and again. You don't win that battle, and you don't have the courage to step up and the confidence to have a strong self-efficacy that you can actually win that battle unless you knew you were pretty good at your craft. So what's your idiosyncratic secret weapon, and how do we bring that to life and have the wisdom, the self-mastery, the courage, and the love to show up as our best selves? And again, for me, it's not even daily. You have to make today a masterpiece if you want to make your life a masterpiece, no question. But carpe diem isn't even possible. It's carpe punctum. Can you seize this moment? And then the reason we're so excited about that AM commitment routine is, again, Roy Baumeister, pre-commitment. I chatted with you a number of times, chatted with Roy, who, of course, wrote the book on willpower. Willpower exemplars don't use their willpower that much. They pre-commit like Odysseus did. So we need to pre-commit, set our intention in the beginning of the day to play the most important game well today. And then our thoughts and our behaviors, our attention, of course, will follow that clear intention. But again, it can't be a once in a while thing. You know, consistency is the mark of the master. So how do we simplify our lives, show up, play the ultimate game like we mean it? Again, not someday, but today. But yeah, I love that. And for me, that was my very much a moment. Find that open mic, maybe. That was very much my creative process. Literally, I had been incubating these ideas for so long and had done this and done that over the last 20, almost 25 years now. And it was election night, nearly 43 in the morning. I woke up, I never get up in the middle of the night. And it was literally a 1-minute epiphanal moment for me of it's not that easy to get me rocked these days, but I was politics aside, it was just one of those moments. And I practiced something called targeted thinking, again, inspired by Aristotle. We're teleological. So in that moment, I asked myself, what do I want? I don't want this. What do I want? I'm not going to be a victim. I want to be a hero about this and a creator about it and criticized by creating. And in that moment, it was very clear to me I wanted to help. And you actually captured this with your team in that little video you did. I want to create a more noble and virtuous world, principally for my kids. That was what that epiphanal moment, which was formed with 20 plus years of an integration of a social entrepreneur who's built social platforms and a philosopher reluctant on the entrepreneurial side, ambivalence, boom, resolved in that moment. And then what am I going to do about it? I'm going to create a heroic public benefit corporation. And then the hard work begins of, okay, 30 years, one hard day at a time, you know? And anyway, I love it. And I think that's true for all of us when we unpack what's happened. And then you just need to show up today. Work your protocol. What do you do when you're at your best? You know, you talk about the positive rituals and all the other things that are so important, but we can't do those things occasionally, and we certainly can't do them only when we feel like it. The worse we feel, the more committed we are, is how I teach how you forge true confidence and trust in yourself. Anyway, all the things that you have so deeply inspired me on and that I try to reflect in my work.
You know, Brian, that's amazing and inspiring. Do you mind sharing your daily rituals? You know, what you do to get, you know, to thrive in work and love?
Paul, again, goosebumps for I don't know how many times already. I would be honored to, and I cannot wait to see yours. So the entire Heroic platform, it's a social training platform with guides. And as you know, and as we've discussed, so it's social. So we use the best of social technology, but we're training to be the best version of ourselves with guidance, because a hero gets a guide. So one of the things I'm most excited about is to ask you that question and to see it in our app. So our app literally is all about that. So I will be able to see, if we do our jobs and you are so inspired, what you do. And then we all can see what each other do to show up with virtue and integrity with our deepest selves. Now, personally, I look at my energy, my work, and my love, and I'm actually going to open my app again, because I'll share with you the top 3 behaviors I engage in my energy, in my work, and in my love. From a day perspective, what I teach is today started yesterday. Most people think today started the moment they woke up. I don't believe that's true. I believe today started with how you ended yesterday. And if you ended yesterday blowing your brain up with blue light stimulation, binge watching Netflix, good luck waking up feeling great. So you got to start with your PM bookend. My PM bookend begins with a very clear shutdown complete work-wise, a very clear technology off, I call it digital sunset, and deep love time. And sleep is a sport for me. So I got 9 hours of sleep last night. I'm feeling pretty good. My day started last night by prioritizing going to sleep literally right after we put the kids in bed. Then you'll see that I have AM meditation, 60 minutes. So I start every single morning for a very, very long period of time.
60 minutes.
And this little thing,
wow.
Yeah. And I do, for me, my joke is I'm not trying to levitate in the Himalayas. We have something called heroic meditation. I start with breath work, which changed my life. I was anxious about everything as a young kid and a young man. Training my breath has given me a sense of energized tranquility and calm confidence that I've practiced every day for 11 minutes. I do 5 sets of 12 different things. First breath, very briefly. Then I imagine my heroes. I literally invite them into my consciousness and they speak to me every day. And they give me a command for that day. You know, Lincoln tells me, who's up there, win the inner civil war so you can contribute to winning the external war. Ralph Waldo Emerson tells me, trust thyself. Every heart vibrates at iron string. Each of them has something to tell me, 12 minutes. Then I focus on virtues, the 4 cardinal virtues and the scientifically most highly correlated with flourishing virtues. Then I envision the world I want to create. So it's a very practical meditative exercise for me. Anyway, I meditate and then I move. I've got a certain set of practices I do every day. I do 1 sun salutation, 10 pull-ups, 100 burpees. I row 1,000 meters and I walk at 10,000 steps. My own idiosyncratic thing, but each of us needs to move. Longer chat, as you know and as you teach. And then I shut down my electronics. Those are my 3 top habits for energy. And the way I teach it is, if you know what you do, which is different than me, in energy, work, and love, and you do those 3 things, good luck having a bad day. Then via your big 3 and the top 3 in 3 minutes, you can quit going up and down and you can really start structuring your days, etc. Work-wise, briefly, I recommit to what I call a sacred vow that I made to our 2,500 investors, committing to practicing my philosophy. And then I do deep work. I am creative before I'm reactive. I never allow an input in until I've done 30, 60, 90 minutes of deep work. That is my secret to any level of productivity or prolific, whatever I have. It's that. I never react before I create. And then the third thing I do work-wise is I shut down completely. When I start my day, I decide when I will end it. I create bright lines. And then in love, I'll flip to that now. My identity is joyful soulmate. I do 3 things. Number 1, I put my phone away when I'm with my family. The iPhone effect scientifically is unequivocal. If you have your phone out, you will not deeply connect with your family or friends, so I put my phone away. My number 2 thing is I kiss my wife. Kiss your wife is my target. Just go give her a kiss, a peck. Tiny little thing, done consistently leads to great results. And the third thing I do in love is I eat a challenge like an energy bar. I love it all. I say yes to life's challenges, etc. Anyway, I've got a series of targets below that I strive to engage in, and I can't wait to see yours in our community here and inspire one another with how we're showing up idiosyncratically day in and day out.
Wow. I like the fact that you have people sharing theirs because, you know, we learn best from others through imitation. As Oscar Wilde said, you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery. And one of the things that we teach, you know, in our year-long program is the importance of biographies, of learning from heroes. In fact, I believe that the best self-help books or the best leadership books are not the ones that give you the 5 steps to happiness or the secret to the good life. Rather, they are good, solid, intimate biographies. So, what are your top 3 recommendations for today? They don't have to be your all-time favorites, but your recommendations for good biographies.
Let me comment on that briefly because we call that in our program being a radiant exemplar. So when we certify coaches, we say you're a client number 0. If you are out of integrity with your idiosyncratic philosophy, then who are you know you need to be worthy of that by being a demonstration. And that again is why I'm so excited about the social. Is I actually think it's the microbiographies, seeing what you do on a daily basis, seeing what some of my dear friends do, seeing what our community does. That's every little moment. Every day, we're getting a little biographical sketch of people committed to living in integrity with their ideals. Never perfectly, but more and more consistently. Let's see, what immediately comes to mind, I love How to Think Like a Roman Emperor by Donald Robertson. So I'm kind of part positive psychologist, part stoic. That's kind of my ancient wisdom tradition I most resonate with, which of course influenced Viktor Frankl, Where Are You? There You Are. And a number of others, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. Donald Robertson's a great writer. He's a psychotherapist and Stoic practitioner and scholar. I love that. And Gandhi, Gandhi the man. So Gandhi's right back there. Eknath Easwaran. I've done 3 notes on your books, Tal, as you know. Eknath Easwaran is actually the author that I've profiled the most. I think I've done 8 of his books. One of them is called Gandhi the Man. So Eknath Easwaran is kind of like, from my vantage point, an Indian Joseph Campbell, who is he taught the first mindfulness meditation course at UC Berkeley as a Fulbright scholar in the 60s. Beautiful man who walked with Gandhi. Gandhi the man. And Gandhi challenges me every morning to make my life my message and to reduce myself to zero. And he's the one who coined Soul Force, by the way. Satyagraha, which was his nonviolent resistance that we weekly translated, in Sanskrit means love force or virtue force or soul force. So he's the one that gave the name to it. And Martin Luther King used the phrase soul force in his I Have a Dream speech. So it's the power that changes the world. Anyway, those 2, Gandhi the man, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. How about A Hero with 1,000 Faces? That's a good one. Joseph Campbell, which has that big picture look. You're the hero we've been waiting for, which is the ultimate point of every hero's journey we admire in a movie screen or in a book or in a biography. It's simply because it points to the unrealized potential within each of us. So that's another book that I found deeply inspiring, more academic in nature. Great question. And those are some quick thoughts in the moment.
Good. Thank you. Well, I've read 2 of them. One will go on my reading list. So Brian, we're opening it up for questions. Here is how it will work. So if you have a question, please put your hand up. You can go down to reactions and put your hand up. We'll call on you, and then you can ask the questions. I will also be checking the chat to see if there are any questions there. But let's begin with Gabby. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah. Thank you very, very much. Well, first of all, I want to thank Brian, because I've been follow his work for several years, and it's made a big impact in my life in a lot of aspects. I've done your Love 101 with my husband, and your relationship with Alexandra inspired me a lot. So first of all, I want to thank you. And my question, let's see if I can make myself clear. I think I have this heroic like expectation of myself. Like sometimes I put these really high expectations, but then sometimes you fall short, and then it can be hard on yourself when you create these big expectations to make this big change, and then you're not able, maybe disciplined enough, or you made a commitment and you didn't attach to it, and then it becomes it starts to build up your self, how do you say, your confidence in yourself. So how do you what do you recommend on that situation?
Yeah, this is so fun for me, Tal. Gabby, great to see you. I'm honored to be part of your life, and that you and your husband got so much out of Love 101. And it's so funny for me, Tal, because you know how I'm going to answer this question? I'm going to reference one of my favorite teachers of all time and his great book, The Pursuit of Perfect. And then I'm going to talk about self-compassion briefly. So this guy that I really love, one of my favorite all-time teachers, named Tal Ben-Shahar, wrote a great book called The Pursuit of Perfect. In that book, he differentiates 2 different types of perfectionism. As you know, I imagine, Gabby, from me teaching this in my context. Tal, apologies if I in my brevity, missed some things. But basically, there are 2 different types of perfectionists, right? Both have high standards, but one does one very important thing, which is embrace the constraints of reality and the fact that we will never actually be perfect. Tal calls that an optimalist, They strive to be the best within the constraints of the reality versus the perfectionist who doesn't get the fact they're never going to be perfect, thinks it's a distant shore they're going to versus a guiding star that is orienting them in their lives. So the trick is to maintain the high standards while knowing there's no there. You will never be perfect. As Maslow says, there are no perfect human beings. And as I like to say, you and I won't be the first. Our 4-year-old, now 5-year-old daughter, we joke about it. When we make a mistake, we're like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to be the first perfect person. That's my 10,782nd mistake. And she literally laughs about it. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. Growth mindset 101. So we've got to embrace that constraints of reality. We're never going to be perfect. And if we think we are, we will suffer, full stop. Again, longer chat. Then self-compassion is important. But I've kind of taken Kristen Neff's work one step further because self-compassion briefly, 3 steps. 1, you've got to know it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you that you're falling short of your standards. Common humanity. We all fall short. Again, Tal and I, everyone, again and again and again. That's a sign you care, right? Nothing's wrong with that. Common humanity. 2, you're kind to yourself. 3, you're mindful of when you aren't. Those are her 1, 2, 3 for self-compassion. I add a +1. You need to move past that. And you need to notice the thing you keep on doing that isn't working. And you need to take a flashlight with compassion to your life and what's working and what needs work, and a hammer and actually do the thing that you know you could be doing. And again, it's a delicate balance and it's a longer chat. And then ultimately, we get into trouble when we're measuring ourselves on outcomes. If you think you should be at a point you're not at, you should already have been on Oprah or have a best-selling book or have made so much money or whatever it is that your story is, which is often extrinsic in nature, first of all, versus intrinsic. And it's somehow outside of you and you need to get there in order to be happy. You will suffer. If, on the other hand, we can get the fact that the only moment in which we can truly show up as our best self and the only moment that ultimately matters is this moment. In this moment, can we live with arete? Can we express the best version of ourselves? And as I say, in that moment in which you express the best version of yourself, you are heroic. You don't need to wait until some outcome downstream comes to your life. You are, in that moment, feeling eudaimonia. And eudaimonia isn't the way Tal defines happiness is happiness, right? The way most people define happiness is good mood. But eudaimonia has all the emotions. Sometimes you don't feel good because you let yourself down. And frankly, you should feel a little bit of that healthy guilt and regret that you could do better next time. Mm-hmm. But, I have sleepless nights. Does that mean I'm doing it wrong? No, it means I'm striving to live heroically. And if I can embrace the full spectrum of emotion and know that eudaimonia is all of that, including letting myself down and others down, then I can move forward in this moment, strive to do my best. And the moments you fall short, you use that as an opportunity to close the gap. And rather than shame yourself and go further down into a vicious cycle, you go up and you say, perfect. What could I do a little differently next time? And then you use that data to get a little bit better with a true growth mindset, et cetera, et cetera. I both said a lot and just scratched the surface on a lot of themes, but I'll be quiet. So I'm super excited to hear your thoughts on it. I thought that was super funny because literally you are my go-to on that again and again and again.
And I wanna say, obviously, Tal's I'm on Tal's certificate, so it has helped me a lot. But what you said also helped me because sometimes being able to be compassionate with myself, I don't know if am I doing, maybe I should put my expectations lower because then I'm not being compassionate when I don't rise to my own expectations. So it really, your input really helped me. But obviously now my motto is give myself the opportunity to be human is like it's written on my wall. So yes, he is a great teacher and I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, Gabi, and thank you, Brian. Wow, you really read the book. So
it's a good book. It's a good book, Tal. You describe it brilliantly.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Gabi. And why don't we move on to another question? I see we have a few. Wendy.
Sorry. Hi, good morning. What an inspiring and joyful talk. And I'm very familiar, or somewhat familiar, I should say, with the hero's journey, because I work in stories and I'm always looking for the internal or the external, either someone else's story or my own story. But I have a bit of a generational question for you. So I'm very struck how every moment, at least that you've described in this particular conversation, seems very prescribed. So you're on a journey from the night before you wake up, and you describe your meditation, X number of breaths, X number of this breath, and very, very as habits are and need to be mathematical, linear, this gets done, that gets done. And then also you use the quiet time for creative visualization and to be inspired by your heroes. So my question is, and your day, goes, and we all have our Google calendars, so I see the linearity and usefulness of every moment being made use of. But is there a moment in your day where you allow the silence, like just silence to accumulate? Like there's no prescribed meditation, there's just sitting. There are those moments, of course, we're all human, in the shower, there's moments where you're relaxing, I'm sure. But how are those times for you? Like when are those times for you?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, the way I describe the meditation is a loose rule. So it's not like I'm sitting here, and I do have a timer that goes off every basically 12 minutes. It reminds me or just tells me, okay, cool, we can transition. I'll often sit for an hour in pure stillness and silence. And when I'm doing my breath work, it is silence. And I might have a guiding mantra or just a kind of a presence. And then for me, there's obviously many different styles of meditation that I strive to integrate into one practice. So there's the focused, attention cultivation. Then there's the passive, just allowing that stillness to be present. So even in what I described, there is more dynamicism than how I described it, which is, again, one of the challenges of describing anything. It is certainly prescriptive, and I'm unapologetic in that the idea that we need structure, yet if we want to follow Dan Siegel's wisdom and be flexible, we need to make sure the structure, so a river of flexibility is how he describes a healthy human being. On one side, you have a bank of structure. On the other side, you have a bank of spontaneity. It's easy to flood structure into rigidity, no longer flexible and healthy, but it's also easy to flood spontaneity into chaos, not healthy. Now, I lean toward Confucius more than Lao Tzu. So Confucius talks about soul force. He describes it as Da, D-E. So it's moral charisma, right? And Wu Wei, which was the Chinese pursuit of soul force, can be achieved in a number of different ways. So I tend to go to Confucius's style, which is you carve it out of rock through rigorous discipline. Lao Tzu is the exact opposite. Lao Tzu was, no, it's all about spontaneity. You got to find spontaneous non-effort by being super spontaneous all the time. Whereas Confucius said, no, create structure. Then you'll be able to spontaneously show up from a connection to your daimon, to something bigger than yourself, etc. But anyway, stillness is so important, and it's the amplitudes in life. And Tal, I quoted you again yesterday in the studio. It's not that we work too hard, Tal says, it's that we don't recover enough. I'm fierce in my recovery time. So when I'm with my kids, no phone, stillness, presence. Can I be on when I'm on, and can I be off when I'm off? I'm on the trail, I listen to music, but that's my default mode, turning it on. I'm not overly thinking of things. And by the way, Tal, that's when I have a lot of my best ideas. I'm in the car, never listen to news. I don't read digital news. So my stillness is, my mind is quiet and still and focused on what I've decided is most important. I'm not on social. I don't read digital news, except for when I do, which was a few times since the Ukrainian situation escalated. Otherwise, I read The Economist once a week. Pictures, no videos, stillness. So again, we want that energized tranquility, and we've got to find it in our own idiosyncratic way. So my own personal life is my own idiosyncratic expression. And then my encouragement to our community is, I think we need some structure. And I think something like energy, work, and love is a pretty healthy structure. And then I think getting clarity on who you are at your best, and you are so different than me. My wife is so different than me. Tal is so different than me. But we share the commonality of let's be our best selves. Let's live with the virtues that we most aspire to have. And let's do so like we mean it. And this is where Campbell's Ramakrishna, do not approach enlightenment unless you approach it like a man whose hair is on fire or a woman whose hair is on fire approaches a pond. So ultimately, I'm finding my path dynamically, and I'm excited for each of us to do so and find that flexibility with proper structure, proper spontaneity, but deep, deep idiosyncratic, Nietzsche, what is the way? There is no the way. This is my way. What's your way? And my challenge is live it. So whatever you believe to be true, my deepest, fiercest challenges, are you in integrity with it? Not perfectly, but are you committing to be in integrity with it? And if not, what are you waiting for? We need you. Let's go. Anyway, that's a long answer now, but love it. And yeah, I strive to find pockets of that. And you have to, if you want to have good energy in the midst of doing what I'm personally trying to do right now. I would explode if I didn't take the time to just turn it all off and to be present, to be still, and connect to that eudaimonic version of myself through stillness and then through full engagement. And it's that beautiful, balance of the two, I think, that is the secret.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really inspiring and useful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, for your question, and Brian for the answer. I think the idea here is that there is a principle, and the principle is that we want, both elements, the structure and the spontaneity. So that's the principle. It's universal. It applies to all human beings, all times, all places. And then there is the particular, the idiosyncratic. And there, obviously, for Wendy, it's different than for you or for anyone else. And I really like the metaphor of the river, because a river flows within a structure, within the banks.
Constantly dynamic. It's never, there's no such thing as static balance. So it's more like the other metaphor I love is a tightrope walker. So a tightrope walker is never actually in balance, in quotes. It's dynamic, a little bit too far to the right, a little bit too far to the left, but we're aware of where we're at. And even Aristotle, again, the virtuous mean will be arrived at differently by each of us. So for me, I need more stillness, which, Wendy intuits. And well, how do you bring stillness into your life? Which is a deliberate practice for me. And I'm not saying this is necessarily true for you, Wendy, but perhaps someone needs more structure. I don't need more structure. I need more spontaneity. Just ask my wife. And, there's a level of dynamicism that we each need to find. We also describe it as the universal and the unique. So that idea of the general and the specific, and that's what's so beautiful, is that each of us will express these truths in our own idiosyncratic, unique, very specific way. And even that will be dynamic as the river flows and changes moment to moment to moment.
Amazing. Thank you. Shaza, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes. This
Hi.
is correct. Hi. So thank you for taking my question. I'll try to be brief. I really like your analogy of creative and heroic as being parallels. I'm really trying to wrap my head around that, because I consider myself creative. I absolutely do not consider myself heroic. But I'm wondering that, do you say it's a gap between when they're parallel? So is there a gap? Is there a crevice? How do we bridge the creative to heroic by keeping your concept of structure and spontaneity? Because I feel that when you're a hero from history, you're very, very not spontaneous. I feel that you're very committed and very rigid, whereas creatives are, all over the place. So I'm really trying to wrap my head around this, and I hope you can help me.
This is great. Well, I love it. And again, such a rich question with so many potential ways we can approach it. Abraham Maslow comes to mind again. And one of my favorite concepts that he has, which is reflected in Jim Collins, the great business strategist, is we dissolve the apparent dichotomies between all of these apparent opposites. So Maslow says that the self-actualizing individual is simultaneously both structured and spontaneous, and selfish and unselfish. The dichotomies dissolve. Are they working or are they playing? Are they rigid or are they spontaneous? I can't get people that can plan their next day the night before. I'm unbelievably spontaneous. I come out of my meditation and I have guidance on what is most important for me that I did not have the night before, but then I do it. So I'm connecting to something in my stillness, to something that I believe is bigger than myself, and then I follow it with direction. So Jim Collins calls it the genius of and. So what we want to do is embrace the apparent dichotomies and integrate them. And then I would offer the difference between, I draw a spectrum. There's a victim and then there's a creator. And then I would offer the creator is really just a synonym to me to hero. And we'll redefine hero, I think, importantly, briefly. But the victim complains and criticizes and gossips and kind of whines, to put it very directly. And it's kind of the default mode in our society. It's easier to whine and be in an echo chamber of frustration than it is to do something about the things that you don't like. Michelangelo, again, said, criticize by creating. So the shift from victim to creator is simple. What do I want? And I teach this to my kids. So they're doing their thing. They're 9 and 5. But my question to you is, I get it. You're upset. And I appreciate that. Let's respect the emotion for the moment it's arising. What do you want? Because I want to help you get what you want in life. And I can't if all we're doing is focus on what you don't have. What do you want? And then what are we going to do about it? Now, I would offer that the individual that consistently says that to themselves and is doing so with a purpose bigger than themselves in service to their family, to their communities, to the world, is a hero. Because etymologically in ancient Greek, when they came up with the word for hero, they did not pick tough guy, maker of history, or anything like that. They picked a word that literally meant protector. So in ancient Greece, and I would offer in our modern world, a hero is a protector. You, in what you're doing and protect, however you create value in the world, and if you're part of Tal's program, you're committed deeply to something bigger than yourself. That to me is heroic. And then I extend that, and then I challenge you to show up more and more consistently as that. But again, the hero was a protector. Their secret weapon was love. Literally, it was not anything other than love that drove them to have the self-mastery to do what they needed to do, whether they felt like it or not, and to have the courage to show up and go toward the front of the battle rather than pull the covers over their heads. It was love that drove that. And I would offer, we just have a semantic issue with hero and heroism and what it means to be heroic. And I want to redefine it and establish it as no. Why you are inspired, goosebumps again, by any hero story you've ever watched or read, it's because that's you. It's you manifest on the movie screen or in the book or in the biography. And we just need to do the hard work. And society's told us it should be easy. It's not. It's hard work to show up consistently. And that's always been the case, always, 2,500 years. Between vice and virtue, we got to show up and win that inner war so we can contribute to the external. But anyway, I would offer that victim, creator, hero, protector, and super inspiring to imagine each of us coming alive and giving our best to the world more and more consistently together.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you
Is it
so
okay?
much for taking my question. Thank you, Tal. Thank you, Brian. I really love this webinar.
Shaza. Thank you. Brian, is it okay if we take one more?
Tal, I have the time that you have, and I'd be thrilled to. This is super fun.
Great, thank you. So,
are we working or playing right now, Tal? I have a question.
I know
are we working or playing? Because it doesn't feel like either. It feels like some eudaimonic expression of what we're here to do.
Yeah, I'll draw on the genius of the and. We're working and playing.
There we go. Love it.
Ruben.
Hello, everyone from Florida. Brian and Tal, it's great to hear both of you. Brian, I love the analogy of structure and freedom. I always said structure needs to have freedom and freedom needs to have structure. Otherwise, we have chaos. So that's great. And your universality with individual expression also really speaks to me. To take a phrase from Tal, permission to be human. And we know we all like to be superhuman at times. So how do you deal with your weaknesses? And how do you manage the days you just are empty? You're a giver. So there are days that you just are not into it. So how do you manage to pull your strengths when your weaknesses are really awake?
This is so good. What a rich conversation again. Permission to be human, yes, and permission to be heroic. And I would offer that self-compassion is so important, no question about it. I call it heroic healing balm. You're going to go out and you're going to battle dragons. Dragons, you're not sidestepping lizard on a hero's journey. You're battling dragons. Dragons have sharp claws. You will get attacked and you will lose limbs, and you're going to need to apply the healing balm via the 1, 2, 3. Common humanity, nothing's wrong with you. And this is how I deal with my weaknesses, which again, Epictetus would say, my God, if you knew all of my weaknesses, we wouldn't just be talking about that one. I'm more, comfortable with the fact that I'm not perfect than I've ever been, which is part of the power here, that I don't need to resist what is, and I can embrace the fact it's not supposed to be easy, I'm not perfect, etc. But I think simply embracing the fact that it's supposed to be hard, which is in objective 1, I talk about, you got to know the ultimate game. In objective 2, I say rule number 1 of that game is it's not supposed to be easy. And our story that it's supposed to be easy is the thing that drives the hammer into our consciousness that we're not good enough. It's what drives the shame. So if I can look at it and go, oh my God, I'm trying to change the world. Or my God, I'm trying to be a good husband and a father. That's not supposed to be easy. Stress goes with meaning. And I'm striving to have a lot of meaning in my life, and I have a corollary amount of stress in my life. Perfect. Simply not arguing with that reality, for me, has transformed my life. And it's one of the cardinal things that I teach. Now, having said that, literally this last weekend, I'm working hard right now, and I'm training my recovery and I'm pushing. We're launching in a month. I hope what we're developing is great, but you don't know as an artist before you go out and ship it. And we just spent millions of dollars on it. I got 2,500 investors. I hope it's good. Of course I feel anxious about it. Something would be wrong with me if I didn't. Creativity goes with anxiety. Literally, it was either Saturday or Sunday where I just didn't feel like, after my meditation, I'm just a little tired. And I didn't feel like doing what I do next, which, and again, I have a protocol that I work with my own level of consistency, which will vary from person to person. And literally, I looked up on my wall, I've got my heroes, and I put my own, when someone joins our team, we get their favorite picture that most captures them at their best, and we make it heroic. And then we commit to creating the conditions through which they can show up as that version of themselves, and we challenge them to show up as that version of themselves. So I'm in my office here, and I got this little, I do my stretching in the morning, and I'm literally on the ground, and I don't feel like it. One of those days, I don't feel like it. And I look up at that guy, and he smiles, he laughs, and goes, perfect. Now it needs to get done. And that's what the hero says. What do I want? I want to strive to show up as the best, most heroic version of myself. I will never be perfect. Perfect. So I don't need to argue with the reality that I don't feel like doing what I know I need to do or I committed to doing. And so then I did it. And Tal, I actually thought of you because Tal has some great wisdom in the creative process. Tal is a writer, yet Tal, like all writers, doesn't often feel like writing. Perfect. Tal's a professional. So what Tal does is he recognizes his feelings, but he doesn't run his life by his feelings. His feelings don't drive his behaviors, which would drive his identity. His identity as a guy committed to living heroically, I would say, and serving humbly yet powerfully, his identity drives his behaviors, which then drives the feelings. That's eudaimonic joy. So in that moment, literally, Tal, I looked at my daimon, you kind of flashed through my mind in your own way, and I did what I needed to do. It was a very simple movement exercise for me, and it was surreal. My morning was amazing. I did exactly what I needed to do because I did until your line in the writing thing was, just give us 5 minutes. You don't need to write perfectly. You don't need to write anything good, but give me 5 minutes. So this is why I'm so excited about the idea of our protocol, because if we can help you identify what you do when you're at your best, and then I can help you do that, especially when you don't feel like it, you'll change your life. Because in that moment, your feelings won't drive your behaviors, your identity will. And to me, that's the definition of heroism. In that moment, you don't feel like it, and you do it anyway. And not in a self-shaming, overly rigid way, in a, I care about my life. This is meaningful to me. And I have decided that I'm going to show up this way. And I know I'm not going to feel like it a lot of times. And then I'm going to go do what needs to get done anyway. And then it's surreal to me how feelings follow behaviors, you know? And if I'm willing to just do the little thing, I forget about it. And it was a case study for me less than a week ago. Anyway, I'm saying a lot, but that's some of what I think. And then final thing, the permission to be human drives compassion, which is important to suffer with. We all suffer. But I would offer that the permission to be heroic drives another important virtue, which is encouragement. And Aristotle said the most important virtue is courage. It comes from the word that means heart. It pumps blood to all the other virtues, just like your heart pumps blood to your arms and legs and vital organs. To encourage someone, which is what we're all doing right now, is to inject someone with courage. So I think that this permission to be heroic and to actually take our foot off the brakes and to take that one step outside of our comfort zone when we don't feel like doing it, and then do that consistently, humbly, yet heroically. And arete equals heroic. And to me, that's how we change the world, is stepping up in those moments when we least feel like it. That's the hero. They're not running backwards. They're continuing to move forward. They're willing to act in the presence of fear, in the presence of fatigue, overwhelm, doubt, pain, uncertainty, for something bigger than themselves. Someone asked in the chat, protecting what? You tell me. What's important to you in your life? Is it raising healthy kids? Because I look at what, and I never picked a fight before now, what Mark Zuckerberg is doing at the metaverse terrifies me. I do not want my kids growing up in a virtual reality created by that organization. I just don't. I want to protect my child's consciousness. And I'm thinking about these things. Most families aren't. I want to protect other children's consciousness and create that more noble and virtuous world. But what's important to you, protect those values, those virtues. Let's create that better world together. In those moments when we don't feel like it are the moments in which they're a blessed, sacred opportunity. Did David feel like it? I can assure you he didn't. That wasn't a feelings-driven moment for him. That's kind of the whole point. But we have those moments all day, every day. The good hero's journey is 1,000 hero's journeys in a day. You feel uncomfortable, you step back and say, what do I want? And you do what needs to get done, whether you feel like it or not. And you do that enough and you're frightened of less things. You know you're not going to feel like it. Blah, 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 blah. So I'll be quiet, but that's much of my thinking on the subject. Love the question.
Thank you for that. It's for me, it's really easy to do it for other people. It is not so easy to do it for me. And that's the work for me.
And Ruben, as Brian said, you know, we didn't sign up for it to be easy. And the question here is, what is our expectation? Do we expect this to be easy, or do we expect this to be, you know, challenging? You know, Brian, I love what you brought up about, you know, not feeling like doing certain things and then doing them anyway. And this is the idea, you know, procrastinators in general have a certain mindset, which is inspiration comes before action. Whereas I think for the hero, it's the opposite. It's action comes before inspiration.
And it's, I mean, so much goodness on that. You know, the whole procrastination and pain, you can put someone into an fMRI and their pain centers will light up in their brain when they're thinking about doing math problems or something they don't like. But when they actually do them, the pain goes away. So I call that procrastinating. And the moment we actually do the thing we're afraid to do, by having courage, the virtue of courage, willing to act in the presence of fear, it actually isn't painful. And in fact, it's eudaimonically joyful, because we just did something that we didn't want to do, and that feels great. And then you're frightened of one less thing, which is why Emerson says, God will not have his or her work made manifest by cowards. And yet, when you always do the thing you're afraid to do, the death of that particular fear is certain. You know you can handle it. One more little quote, Joseph Campbell: the demon you can swallow gives you its power. If you can do the thing you're afraid of, you get the power from that thing. But if you're never willing to go out of your comfort zone, which by definition feels uncomfortable, then you'll never tap into your infinite potential. And you don't need to be silly about it. Just go 4% outside of your comfort zone. Do that little thing, but then do the next little thing and the next little thing. The power grows in this beautiful, grounded, heroic way.
Terrific. Thank you for that. We'll just take a couple of more questions, if that's okay. Adrian.
Whew. Hey, Brian. I'm back again for you.
Good to see you.
First up, I just want to say thank you to both of you. I think, I've been with Brian since 2011, and just thank you to both of you. I mean, when it comes to positive psychology, learning of Tal Ben-Shahar through Brian, and just like coming with a serious mental illness, being able to get past zero, the fact that both of your work has been able to do that, thank you so much. I think also for Brian, I mean, just everything you've done has helped me get past that and done that for me. And I'm super excited for Heroic and like turning, I don't know if you could see this, but Brian showed me how to do this. And it's like the fact that that's going to change is amazing. I think my question is, as I was staring at this, tips on showing up heroically. I think if I'm thinking of energy, work, and love, we've been working on this. I've been working on this with you for forever. And I think the energy is really like heroically for myself. And then the work is heroically for the world. And then the love is heroically, I think, for my family and my community and my loved ones. My biggest thing, and I'm looking at it, is energy, work, love, and that priority, it gets flipped. And I'm like, oh, I'm like just about work. And that becomes WLE, where I'm last. So any tips on like making sure, I'm almost putting in the sense of energy, love, work is the priority that I'd want to do. Any tips on shifting it so maybe work is the last thing that I'm like focused on or prioritizing when it comes to showing up heroically?
Again, this is the idiosyncratic, and creatively we got to make certain decisions. And this is one of those things where you got to make certain calls and create a certain structure. It's a possibility that we could actually redesign the app of, well, which one do you want? What order do you want here? You know, I'm agnostic to that, but at the highest level, but we need to get all three working. And to your point, work isn't the challenging one for most of us, especially, ambitious men and women who are just so focused on that. It's balancing the love. And I have the most targets in my love category. And I'm actually most excited about the love category. And we actually considered architecting the app so every single thing you did was an act of love. It was either an act of self-love and energy, or creating purpose and serving others. And it became a little bit weird, so we needed to boil it down and not do that. But literally, the way that we've architected and the way that I'm teaching the love and operationalizing certain principles in love is what I'm most excited about. So good relationships, John Gottman and the, science of making marriages work. It's about responding to bids from your significant other. So I have targets. Respond to bids, not just from my wife, but from my kids. My kids are constantly making bids. Now, I used to be less aware of them, but when I commit in the morning to being a soulmate to not only my wife, but to my kids and to each of us here today, I'm deliberately practicing my love in my work. There's no difference between the two. As a leader, am I not led by love? Of course I am. Now, you got to create some structure just because semantics you need to. But anyway, I'm responding to bids all day, every day, literally. And my kids, Emerson yesterday said to me, "Daddy, I'm making a bid." Literally is what he said. You want to hit the target of responding to the bid? I'm like, yeah, I do. Let's go. And he showed me his Legos, his Ninjago Legos, Anyway, operationalizing love is something I'm so excited about, especially for guys like us, to put it very directly. It's easy to flood our work. And then things like shut down complete. So you transition from there to love is so important. Simple things. And this is where, even in conversation today, I realized I need to do a better job at making it very clear that it's the most mundane, smallest things that are the most heroic. It's the moment-to-moment choices we're making or not making that create a heroic life. Because we have this naive idea that it's someday when I achieve that versus no, moment to moment to moment. And again, Teresa, I always mispronounce her name, Amabile out of Harvard, same thing. It's the small wins. It's making progress. So all day, every day, hit those little targets. Be a little bit more present for that minute, the 10 minutes with your loved ones, and then create healthy constraints around your work so it isn't flooding your entire life, yet show up powerfully in work. Because for most of us who work full-time, it is the majority of our time. That's a constraint of our reality. We need to pay the bills. Well, let's honor that. Yet, when we're not working, don't work. Be fully present without your phone, with your family. And, you know, love isn't measured in hours like our work is. It's measured in moments. Our work is too, but love especially. And if we can discipline ourselves to be truly present and responsive, knowing we went all out in our work, we didn't leave anything on the court. That's when I'm the most loving person. If I'm procrastinating and I'm wasting time and I'm looking at digital stuff when I should be, in quotes, working, I'm a terrible husband and father, which is why I don't do those things. And when I show up fully in work, I can fully plug out and plug into the love, etc. But anyway, there's always going to be trades. This is Tal's wisdom, constraints of reality. He couldn't work 16 hours a day, train 5 hours a day and be a world-class athlete like he was, and be a great husband and father in the remaining 10 hours in his 40-hour day. He had to make choices, and you're going to make trades, and it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to let yourself down and your family down, and that's part of the deal. And your work down, and perfect. You're on the tightrope. Bend yourself a little bit more toward the virtue rather than the vice of excess or deficiency. And moment to moment to moment, you have a choice. Will you show up and do what you know you could be doing or not? Arete equals heroic. Now. And again, soul force is activated in this moment, not someday. And that's why we admire all these people. Viktor Frankl, in the midst of the Holocaust, after losing his pregnant wife and family, looked at it and said, I have tears in my eyes, I'm a therapist in a concentration camp. I'm going to play my role well, not someday when I get out, right now. Think about the heroic, humble aspect of love in that regard. All of our heroes have done that. And that's, again, why I'm so committed to channeling their energy into each of us, not someday, not even today, but right now.
Wow. Well, we have time. Thank you, Adrian, for that. And we have time for one more. And then we'll each go to our own hero's journey. So Leanne, I'm sorry, Carlos and Karen, but we only have time for one more. Leanne, please.
Thank you. This is a question for both of you. And I kind of like want to pick up on what Ruben was talking about. So all this is really nice and good for the conformist person. Some people have a rebel personality. How would you address that? Because the rebel personality will automatically say no. And it's not a resistance that comes from the hard work, it's the personality. So how would you address that? How would you look into that? Am I making sense?
The conformist versus the rebel.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because my wife, and I don't know if Gretchen Rubin talks about this, and my wife actually referenced this literally earlier this week. She just started using the app. She's a rebel. She doesn't like to be told what to do. I haven't done that work, but I'm obviously much more willing to. I'm an iconoclast, at least an aspiring iconoclast of breaking the right rules, but I'm also willing to create structures in my life that I'm willing to follow. whereas she is not. She chafes on that, even if they're self-imposed. Yet she found the app, in terms of her own autonomous, created identities and virtues and behaviors, to be incredibly empowering. So I think ultimately for me, it comes down to autonomy. If you are pursuing this because you think you should, and the actual initiative is not self-concordant and self-generated, then yeah, all of us are going to chafe with any level of agency. We're going to look at that and go, meh. But I think there's also a stage in our evolution where we realize that and again, not quite the right semantics, but there's an opportunity to conform, to rebel, and then to choose deliberate practices that are going to create the conditions through which our best self can more consistently show up. And if we want to have that intense trust in ourselves, which is what confidence means, confidere, intense trust, not that things will go perfectly, but that you have what it takes to respond to whatever life throws at us, we need to have a better relationship between our dreamer and our doer. And you need to start doing the things that you say you're going to do. And however you get yourself to do that, I think it's important that we figure out how to do it, and maintaining that agency, that autonomy, and realizing I'm personally deciding as an adult to do these things, and I will still rebel. And sometimes that is good. I need to modify what I'm doing because it was too rigid. But I also need to honor that sometimes we flood the other side of it and then find that virtuous mean for ourselves. Anyway, that just arose for Alexandra and us, but Tal, I'm eager to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, for me, it's going back to the universal and the unique. So universal, yeah, we need to have the rebel in us, to say no to things. And it's not for nothing that whether it's the terrible twos or the teenage years, this becomes even more pervasive. Why? Because that is when we're creating an independent human being. So that rebellion, that uniqueness is so important for us as human, to cultivate our idiosyncrasies. At the same time, to lead a healthy, happy, successful life, we also need structures. Now, how do we create the genius of the and when it comes to the rebel and the conformist or the structural? That's unique for each and every, and you and Alexandra are different, and each person is different. And part of the value, the importance of reflection is specifically to reflect on, where do I go my own way versus someone else's way? Where do I take the path less traveled? And where not, because that will ultimately make all the difference.
Beautiful. Genius of the end always, right? And that idiosyncratic expression.
Brian, we have to say goodbye, at least for now. Any final words?
Thank you. I appreciate you, Tal. You've deeply, deeply gets me emotional. You've deeply impacted me in your wisdom, and just feel blessed to have you in my life as a friend and as a, aspiring heroic guide. And what a joy to connect with your community. I so deeply admire you and all you're doing, and feel blessed to be in dialogue with you. As I like to say, heroes unite. Historically significant challenges demand historically significant responses. It feels blessed to be in the arena with you and with your community. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
So my pleasure, Brian. And thank you for all that you're doing. And I'd like to end with just a couple of ideas. The first one that you talked about is essentially that we don't need to do it all. In other words, small changes consistently applied. Small changes consistently applied make a big difference. So think about what you heard over the past 90 minutes or so, or anything else that you've heard over the past day or 50 years that you would like to implement, and take small steps and start now. Don't wait for when. Small changes make a big difference when consistently applied. Second, becoming a hero takes courage. And it's important to keep in mind that courage is not about not having fear. It's about having that fear and going ahead anyway. And finally, Brian, as you were speaking and as you made your voice heard, I thought of Emerson, who's, as you know, also one of my heroes. who said something to the effect of, what you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you're saying. Well, if we take this quote and tweak it slightly and induce the genius of the and into it, I think it very much applies to your life, because what you do speaks so loudly and it simply amplifies what you say. So thank you very much for all that you do and all that you say. And thank you all for being here, for being part of the heroic journey that we're taking on together. Take good care of yourselves and others.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you, Brian.